What's up, everyone? My name is Candace Smith, and I wanted to just make this quick video to discuss the update on the Breonna Taylor's trial and case. And, I don't really talk about a lot of national things, but there are a few things that I want to bring out that you could possibly take from this case right for your community, like to get a better understanding of how things are run in the community. So also, before I get into that, I do want to invite you to check out the new Unfiltered season that's coming up. It'll be dropping in September. I'll be back on the BDE network, and I'm super excited about that. You can go ahead and download the TuneIn app, search for BDE, and just pin them so that you'll already be ready and you could begin to check them out. They play a lot of nice 90s, 2000s, 80s music. It's a nice vibe to keep around throughout the day. They play a mixture of like R&B, some light hip hop, and some gospel. And then they also have some cool talk radio, just like you'll be hearing from Unfiltered. I have some community and church conversations coming up. I have 2 seasons on lock, and I'm just excited. So anyway, I want to get into the update on the Breonna Taylor's case. And so basically, I know everybody know about her story because it's really been nationally, recognized and publicized. And I don't usually speak on those cases because there are people giving a lot of insight on it already. And so I didn't really feel like I had anything to add until this update came out about it, to find out that yes, these police officers will be charged, they will be hopefully sentenced, and they'll serve the time for what they've done, because what they've done is just terrible. They basically falsified records to get this warrant to be able to raid this woman's house, and they ended up taking her life. So yes, they should be held accountable, and shout out to her mother, who continued to keep her foot on the local policing office and the state office, and then the federal. And that's kind of what I want to bring out in this whole video, is just understanding better what's happening, because by doing a few things in the community, because there are a lot of cases that happen within the community that deserves our attention. And the reason why she's getting justice for her death and all of this is coming out, and people will like serve time and they will get consequences for what they've done, is because people were speaking out. They were speaking out. We have to speak out for each other. If we don't speak out for each other, nothing will happen. You will think that this system is so thick that you can't do anything. So check out this news clip, and then I'm going to come out with more
General Merrick
thoughts.
Garland just announced new charges against 4 Louisville police officers involved in the death of Breonna Taylor.
Earlier today, I spoke with the family of Breonna Taylor. This morning, they were informed that the Justice Department has charged 4 current and former Louisville Metro Police Department officers with federal crimes related to Ms. Taylor's death. Those alleged crimes include civil rights offenses, unlawful conspiracies, unconstitutional use of force, and obstruction offenses. The 4 defendants were charged through 2 separate indictments and 1 information.
CNN's Jessica Schneider is here in Washington with the latest. Jessica?
This investigation into Breonna Taylor's death, in terms of the federal civil rights component, this has been ongoing for a very long time here. There's a large team of investigators. And in fact, Breonna Taylor's mother met with the Justice Department just a few months ago in March, pressing them to file charges against these officers. And in fact, as you heard from the Attorney General today, 4 officers from the Louisville Police Department have in fact been charged. What's interesting is that these are different officers who then those who were on the scene that night of that fatal shooting. There's one officer who was on the scene that night. He has been charged for unconstitutional excessive force for firing 10 shots into the side of the building, into the side window that went into Breonna Taylor's apartment and other neighbors. But in addition to that one officer, 3 officers who were involved in crafting the search warrant for Breonna Taylor's home have been charged in this. They've been charged with conspiracy, knowingly falsifying a warrant here. And the premise is that they relied on false information that they knew was false to get a search warrant for Breonna Taylor's home. This was an ongoing investigation into narcotics trafficking. And the Attorney General here says that these officers knew that some of the information they put into the search warrant for Breonna Taylor's home was false. Notably, that her house had received packages for the target in this investigation, and that information was actually false. So the basis of this search warrant for Breonna Taylor's home was false here, and that's why 3 of the officers involved in that warrant are now being charged. So really, Dana, this has been a months-long investigation, now resulting in 4 federal charges, 4 officers being charged federally with various constitutional violations. This is something that Breonna Taylor's family has been pressing for here. You know, this is really the first big set of charges for these officers. One officer was charged with state charges. He was ultimately acquitted, but this is something that the family has been pressing for, and now charges on the federal level will move forward against these 4 officers in the death of Breonna Taylor. Dana?
Jessica, thank you so much for breaking that down. I want to bring in former U.S. Attorney Michael Moore. And as somebody who has been working with the feds, you've been on the federal level pressing charges, obviously, on various cases. That was your job as U.S. Attorney. Put this in perspective.
Well, I'm glad to be with you this morning, and it's obviously good news, I think, for the Taylor family, and a long time coming. It reminds me of sort of the ineptness of what went on with the state investigation. This is information that could have been uncovered early had they verified the information, put into a state search warrant. But when you have the Department of Justice come in and charge a conspiracy case, or really, I guess, lying on the front end about the case and perhaps covering up later, it's a big deal, and it means prison time if convicted for these officers. Unfortunately, I think it's a more common occurrence maybe than we all want to admit, having things put in a search warrant that has not been verified. It's information maybe that somebody said, well, they heard from somebody else and didn't corroborate with the witness. That's always a concern, and in this case, leading to tragic consequences. So. I'm proud to see the investigation has moved forward to this state. Again, I wish that they had done a more thorough job of checking the search warrants, but it's oftentimes the cover-up in cases and sort of the lying and the preparation that catches people when they do wrong, and it seems to have rung true again today.
And as Jessica was saying, only one officer on a state level, local level, has been charged with anything relating to Breonna Taylor's killing, who was actually there.
Right.
Is this the end of the road for the federal investigation, or could they go further and focus more on the officers who were actually there?
I think they'll probably go further. Again, this has been breaking as we've been coming on air, so I haven't seen the documents, but it sounds to me like they've got some room to basically flip cooperators to get witnesses to talk, especially if they have a separate accusation and the indictment. That's sometimes an indication that they intend to have a cooperator in a case. I think they'll probably use these people and say, look, you're going to prison. You can tell us what went on. You can talk about statements made after the fact. You may have information related to the sort of the debrief after the raid. We need to hear that. as it relates to more specific civil rights cases as we think about civil rights claims, typically with the use of the excessive force of the case. I don't know that anybody in their right mind could have looked at this case and not thought that something wrong happened. And that's part of the frustration with the state. I mean, I don't know how you can even have a cursory or first grade review of the facts and not be troubled by what you see. And so my guess is they'll go a little deeper.
If it wasn't for the federal government getting involved in this investigation, there probably would not have been any justice. It would not have even gotten this far. I'll say that, because the federal government got involved. Now a real investigation happens, and when they say investigation, a lot of times they know what the truth is from the very beginning. Even the last man that spoke was saying clearly, there was something that was off within this situation, because the federal government understands the system very well. So they can easily see, even though the state and local government can act like, oh, we don't know what's going on, it's this big mystery of what happened. The federal government can come in and easily decipher that and say that, clearly there is a lot of funny, suspicious things going on, because they understand that system. But what happens is this: the state and local government has this certain relationship with each other. And I've learned this just by being involved in the community with certain individuals, even on the latest Pasco Connect cover, a young man by the name of Marlo Jones, he got himself involved in a situation protesting, and it ended up costing him almost his record. He was charged with a felony, but thankfully, he was found not guilty, and you could check out that story in the latest issue of Pasco Connect. But being involved with that really taught me about the relationships that these government systems have. Within the local sheriff's departments, they all have these relationships because they all recognize that they have to stay in communication with each other. It's not because they always want to or they always agree with what each other's departments are doing. What I learned in this county is that there is a larger system and then a smaller networks within different counties, and even within one county there may be different law enforcement agencies, but they all have to be in communication with each other because they're all working in this one area. And so that's how it looks locally. Then there's a local and state relationship, which it's not always that great, and it's even more opportunities of them being in disagreement. But once again, because they're local and state, they have to work together. So they're going to stay in more communication with each other. They're going to try to stay in good standing with each other because of the funding situations. So they're going to be more likely to try to have each other's back, because they don't want to look bad, because it's going to affect a lot of things. But then when the federal government gets involved, they don't have the same relationships that the local and state agencies have. The federal government can come in and they know that they have the big pot, and they're looking at the big picture, and they're saying, okay, when they have to get involved, they're looking at it from a larger picture than the local and state agencies. They're looking at how this is making the government look on a national level. And because this case got so big, the federal government got involved. And so now when the federal government gets involved, they understand how these local and state systems work. They understand how they have to be in connection and communication with each other. And so they know that they'll have each other's back. That's why it was very easy for him to come in and say, hey, this look crazy, because to even issue a warrant, there's a lot of communications that have to be done. There's a lot of people having to prove why this warrant is needed. And they even said, they directly just lied and said that she was receiving these mysterious packages. That was just something they made up. And they're able to do that a lot of time because being a part of the policing system gives you a lot of power and authority. So they're able to do that. They know that they're going to have each other's backs. And so a lot of times things like this happen on a local level and no one knows or does anything unless it garners attention and support. That puts the pressure on them to come out with an explanation as to why these things are going on. And if they can explain it to the public where it makes sense, then the investigation is opened up. It don't just open up by magic. It opens up because there are people advocating and questioning and putting their foot on their neck, recognizing what their rights are. We cannot leave this knowledge up to the education system. The fact of understanding the government, when they would teach you and say, okay, this is the local, the state, the federal levels, they was teaching us on a very basic level. They're not really breaking it down to you to give you an understanding of how it works in your community. It's for you to get that understanding, and then it's for you to educate your children and the people around you so that they have an understanding of how this works. You have to advocate for yourself and other people. You have to look at these stories and say, hey, I see that happening to my brother, my sister, my cousin, my friend, and that's not right. And we have to speak up and say something. That's how things happen, when we apply the pressure and ask questions and say, why is this happening? Because of that, they were forced to provide answers and open an investigation. And the investigation, the amount of time that it took to investigate this, it had nothing, absolutely nothing to do with what the truth was. They knew what the truth was very early on. They knew that they lied. But they had to basically, stall it, because they have to figure out how to communicate to the community what the truth is. They have to weigh out the options of what is the response of the community, and they have to prepare for that. They have to think about how they're going to serve justice on the people that's supposed to service the community, to show that we do have the community's best interests at heart at the end of the day. And they have to do this very delicately, because at this time there's a lot of animosity towards the policing system, especially when it comes to Black people. And this further just shows that a lot of Black people's outrage is justified. And so the entire time of this air quotes investigation has just gone towards, let's figure out how we finna do this. And so to take out all of the state and local bias that go on, they recognize the federal government had to get involved in order to have someone to really look at this situation without there being, all of this, well, how is this going to affect this and how is this going to affect that? That's why the federal government ended up getting involved in this. And now we can learn the truth. Now we can say, okay, we may actually get the truth, because if it would have stayed in the local and state hands, it just would not have gone any further. And I even read one of the comments, and it was basically saying, thank God that the feds got involved, because if it would have stayed in the state DA's hand, nothing would have been done, because they all work under that system together. They're all working together, and as a network, what you do affects me. And so now, when it comes to the truth being told, we don't know if we want the truth to come out, because it's going to affect us very negatively. And there will be a lot of negative fallout from this behind closed doors and publicly, because it has tarnished that state's and local justice system, and it raises a lot of questions to how they're handling the power and authority. And we should really be pointing that out and saying, what are you going to do to correct these internal fractures that's going on? How are you going to address this, that all of this was being covered up? And it would have just continued to be covered up. There was a lot of cover-ups to get the warrant. That was a cover-up. You falsify information to even be able to do that, and it resulted in a woman's death. So it's very serious, and yes, there should be some consequences, a lot of consequences for that to happen. There should be outrage. So, peace.